All right, we'll get started. Welcome everyone for webinar 984 since COVID started. And so we're going to talk about work from home today and the strategies and just the long-term, short-term impacts on culture and the company. For esteemed panelists with us today, we want to thank you all for your time today. And thought we would just kind of start and have you all introduce yourselves, and then we'll get started. Linda, you want to get us kicked off?
Great. Well, thanks. I appreciate you having me, Craig. I'm Linda Whitley-Taylor, and I am the Chief People Officer for Change Healthcare. I've been at Change for just over 7 years now, hard to believe. And prior to that, I was the Chief Human Resource Officer for Amera Group, which got purchased by Anthem. And then prior to that, I spent about 18 years with GE all over the globe in a variety of different responsibilities, not solely just in the HR world, both operations training and the Six Sigma Master Black Belt. So that's me. I am based in Nashville, and my husband and I have 2 children. And I'll pass the baton to the next.
Right.
Thanks, Linda and Craig. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you here today. I am Brady Delaney. I'm the Director of Talent at Kohlberg & Company. Kohlberg is a middle market private equity firm. We invest in healthcare services, med tech, pharma, as well as other industries like consumer, business services, and industrials. And at Kohlberg, I oversee talent acquisition and talent development internally at our fund level, as well as across our portfolio companies. Prior to joining Kohlberg, I was with another private equity firm called Advent International in a similar role where I was focused on our portfolio companies. And then have spent my early career at Russell Reynolds Associates and Morgan Stanley, all in talent acquisition and development. So thrilled to be here and excited to be part of the conversation today.
Awesome. George?
Hi, everybody. Again, thanks, Craig. I'm George Lazenby. I'm currently a partner in an investment company called Sochi Capital Partners, and as well as the CEO of a company called Order Insight. From experience, I guess I got started in Nashville in public accounting and then moved into industry with a small software company in the healthcare space called Medifax that we sold to WebMD. And then through a course of restructuring, we ended up taking the WebMD portal public, and the remainder of the business that wasn't either sold or taken public with WebMD became MDON. And I ran MDON from 2007 till 2013, took it public in 2009, sold it to Blackstone in 2011. And after I stepped down in 2013, was just going to sit on board. So I joined 4 boards of local companies, Care Payment, Proxys RX, Exelis, and Claris Health. But had the itch to operate again, so I started Order Insight. And the same in 2014, the same year, with 2 other guys, started Sochi Capital, which is not necessarily venture. We invest in businesses where we can take I would say a significant position and where we believe we can have a direct impact on the growth. So we're very active with our companies. We have 5 companies in the portfolio now, sold our 6th one late last year to GoodRx. So happy to be here and look forward to the conversation today.
Awesome.
Thanks, George. My name is Don Taylor, and I appreciate being part of this panel as well. I've had a variety of roles in my 40-year career. Always started as a bag carrying, quota carrying salesperson, and I've never veered much off of that. So revenue is kind of my thing. I've been in healthcare and financial services, titles of CEO, COO, CRO, and I've had the privilege of serving on 15 private boards, company boards over the last 15 years. Currently, I'm an operating partner with Pacific Lake Partners in Boston and California. We're a search fund, and we partner with MBAs from the top schools in the country, and we support them for 2 years to search for companies of 3 to 5 million in EBITDA. and then surround them with a pretty cool group of financial partners. I am part of the value creation team there. So I surround them with a thing called the high performance sales organization. So we help them in their revenue. We have another person for human capital and another person on technology for the value creation team. But obviously we have some much larger companies here. I think George and I probably are in the smaller area. And so obviously the whole COVID work from home process has been a real experiment for all of us across our portfolio. So we'll talk a lot about that. So Greg, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, appreciate you all joining. And really the thought was, Linda's been in very large companies. Brady's been involved in 500 to $1.5 billion. George, you've been involved in a lot of companies in the 30, 40, 50 to 150 range, obviously bigger as well. And then Don's in all over the board, but really investing right now in a lot of emerging companies. So there should be some really good perspectives here. But question one, what were the work from home strategies that your companies and portfolio companies have really been using since this all started, about a year ago?
Well, I'll jump in there, Craig,
Okay.
kind of at first with Change Healthcare. And really, our strategy has really always been centered around building the trust, the connection, and really demonstrating the care for our team members while we addressed clearly, shifting customer needs at a time when we also could reimagine the workplace philosophy and really how we were going to go about that with the technology capabilities we had. So we had everyone at home and productive within 3 weeks, and frankly surprised ourselves with 15,000 employees and 10,000 contractors. We do still have a data center and a print operations coming in under strict guidelines with shifts and lockdowns, but we have convened a task force that quickly jumped in first to really be kind of crisis management, but it's evolved as a team that really helps us reimagine the way that we'll do business longer term. And we've launched, the first thing we did was launch a survey to really understand what we could do to make sure that we supported our employees in their quest to remain safe, because clearly that was our first priority. But that served as a great benchmark for what was to come so that we could really understand from that survey and pulse survey subsequently what was on their minds, what they needed, and how we could help make their lives a little bit easier. So we formed a team comprised of all levels of the organization. Our Future of Work Steering Committee is what we did, and they're still thriving today. This team is made up of most senior leaders right down to frontline employees, and they make recommendations to our executive leadership team about return to work dates, policies, stipends, anything that comes up that they hear from either the survey or the employee population on a regular basis. We have work streams centered around communications, well-being, the overall employee experience, real estate, policies, etc. We've also been very fortunate that we have an infectious disease doctor on our staff. So we've used that resource to educate our employees on the latest medical situations, clearly not giving advice to our employees, but helping them understand the things that you and I hear in the news every day that maybe they're not as up to speed on. And that has been a huge win. We have also, those in the Nashville market know, we also jumped on the real estate issue very early on. It was likely to happen anyway, given that we did a merger with a division of McKesson a few years ago and then went public, but COVID expedited that. And of 126 offices, we've closed 62 of those offices, and including Nashville. And we have communicated that we will only open space for hoteling and collaboration at these sites, and some will never reopen. But those decisions were really made based on the work that's done at each one of our sites. And in the future, we will have an app that people can go in and book hoteling space, book collaboration space, but clearly everyone can't be accommodated every day. We expect that people will come into the office 1 to 2 days at best. We have spent a ton of time focused on educating our leaders how to lead in times of change, how to lead in this environment, and provided them toolkits and resources to help them talk to their teams and support their challenges. We've done it all through quick 30-minute sessions with our senior leadership, advancing our communications, and even added what we call people leader office hours Just like when we were all in college and you had to go visit your professor during those office hours, we have those as well too, so people can really raise their issues and concerns. Currently, and then I'll pass it on to someone else, we have communicated to employees that we will remain at home till at least mid-July. But we're currently determining how we will alter that based on any vaccination updates and any cases. And we plan to strongly encourage our employees to take the vaccine, but it's highly likely that we will require people to do it when they come back to the office. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions or pass it over to another one.
All right, good. Brady?
Do you want me to go? Okay. Linda, that's really so impressive. So thanks for sharing that. I think maybe I'll talk internally about Kohlberg and then some insights across our portfolio companies first. I think so. Our office happens to be we have about 60 employees total, so it's quite small. And our office happens to be a single tenant, no elevator building. And so our team went home fully in March through September. And actually, I felt like, we can talk about productivity and all of that I think at a later question, Craig, but it was pretty seamless. And I think people that, even those that were not necessarily tech savvy and thought they could never live on Zoom have been able to do so and risen to the occasion, and maybe are not quite tech savvy, but they're definitely farther advanced than they were last February. We were able to go back into the office from September through about mid-November, right as the second spike started to get quite bad and the infection rate started to rise in mid-November. We did send everyone back home. We were able to go back into the office really safely. We did take at-home COVID tests once a week. We had a temperature check that would you'd be required to go through to get into the building. We had masks at any time when you were not in your own office alone. But we did have some outdoor space. So we were able to take advantage of some of sort of the building space that maybe we hadn't taken advantage of before. I think it was really nice to be in the office because we had made a number of new hires right around the summertime. And so even though it wasn't normal and we weren't able to be in a conference room with everyone, I think even the small in-person interaction that we were able to do was really valuable. And we've been home since November with plans of going back in about another month. And we're able to take advantage of and change some things while we were home about our office in terms of filtration and Zoom quality, things along those lines. And then when we think about, I think it was the best possible solution for us. I think not everyone is in a position where you're not in a major city, you're not asking people to get on public transportation, and it's a fairly small employee base. So when we think about some of our portfolio companies that have thousands of employees, some were deemed, I think it was pretty much all over the map. Some were deemed essential workers and never left. And so we learned a lot from them in terms of how they got protocols up and running really quickly last spring. And then others were, have been work from home and similar sort of strategy on the real estate side of things will remain largely remote or hoteling for the foreseeable future. So I think what was really nice to be able to sit in our vantage point was that we could connect a lot of our different HR leaders that were dealing with these challenges and learn, and they could really learn from each other, especially ones that did need to be in the office and had to get up to speed on protocols as quickly as possible. And deal with changing sort of legislation and all the craziness that went down in 2020. So I think, I'm not sure I have any specific insights beyond that, but I think it's been really fascinating to watch how different companies of different sizes have tackled this issue and will tackle things like the return to work once we have the vaccines, continuing to roll out and starting to be back in place. So it's been really interesting to watch all different ends of the spectrum. And I think when we think about going back, there will be, and I think this is a question later on, so I won't go into it too much, but I think there's a lot of lessons learned on the positive side of working from home and the flexibility it allows employees to be with their families. I think it will help us continue to attract diverse talent, and really be a positive in a lot of ways. But ultimately, I'm excited to get back in the office and be with people. So I'll turn it to the next person.
All right, George.
Sure. I think as I think about it, all 5 of our companies transitioned to work from home very easily, shockingly easily. And the 4 boards that I'm on, not a single company really had an issue with it. And that just goes to, how mobile we really are, or we really were. I think the biggest learning for me out of all of this had less to do with the work from home and had more to do with how to properly interact with customers, and how to our businesses are primarily software businesses where there's an implementation that goes along with it, and just having the expectation that we can, and learning that we can actually do these things remotely and effectively was a big learning for us. And I think that's going to affect how we pursue talent, how we think about our culture, and certainly how we engage our customers going forward. That's going to be a big change. I would expect that we'll head back into the office on some limited basis, by June, July timeframe, similar to what Linda was saying. But the expectation will be that we'll meet on some regular basis as needed. And if our employees need to work from home, they're all set up to do so effectively now. The customers don't, mind hearing the dog in the background, or, I don't know if you guys just saw mine kind of run through. So it's commonplace enough where those things happen. So I think it's going to be a better overall work environment from an accountability standpoint. I know we'll probably get into that later. There are enough tools out there now where you can really get a feel for that. It's the biggest concern I had was really more around culture, like you said, bringing in new people. And I think there is a desire, especially in that group of people, to get into an office setting just so that they can meet some of these people that they're having to work with. And that's the only reason we're going to retain office space, so we can do that, collaborate in person.
Good. Don, how about you?
So, well, we have 65 portfolio companies, pretty small. We have virtually no HR heads, and so we don't have talent like Brady and Linda on our team. So the CEOs kind of take those roles, and it was amazing, the resilience. As George said, these smaller companies pivoted in a second, and the work from home, the youth movement, they just knew how to do this. And so that was really exciting to see. We supported them in their PPP applications. We are not majority owners of these companies, we're minority. And so the ability for them to get PPP was there. So we stood up a structure quickly and helped them with that. One of our operating partners worked on that. But I think the resilience was the most important thing. And the Zoom cultures we talked about, whether we're technology savvy or not, we figured out how to do this. And I think George is right about the new people. We'll talk about that later. That's the biggest challenge, is how do you onboard people and have them feel a community? But it also is going to open up a huge opportunity for us to recruit from other places. As Brady said, from a diversity perspective, that's really important. But I think the resilience was the most important thing. The Zoom meetings we have, both with our portfolio companies. I used to travel for my consulting work regularly, and I just don't do it anymore. And we found that the effectiveness is almost the same. So, I guess my bright personality in the room doesn't matter. On a screen, it's helpful. But it's been really interesting to see how productive we can be in these very tactical consulting pieces. But with 65 portfolio companies, the only ones that suffered during this process, virtually every company continued to grow, maybe not the same rate. Where our business to B2C businesses obviously suffered. We have a couple of fertility clinics that obviously makes a huge difference for them. But by and large, the portfolio did very well. We're starting to go back to the office now with Pacific Lake. in our Boston office. And we'll talk about it later, but obviously everything blew up. So we have all these colleagues now who went to where they like to live, and now they're loving that. And so we're a small firm with 20 employees. Is that going to be okay? Right? Because the connectivity matters. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Oh, that's good. Well, we've talked a little bit about this, but so let's talk about the company culture. So what's been the impact of this past year, negative, positive, and what are you anticipating it will be the impact going forward, right? We've talked a little bit about that, but would love to, let's dive into that a bit more.
Yeah, so I'll start, Craig, as well too. I mean, I think the reality that we faced in at Change Healthcare is that the best part of the day that all of us have at work has historically been the 10 minutes before a meeting and the 10 minutes after a meeting, because those are the times that we really have the opportunity to build the relationships with the people that we work with every day. And that's been taken away. And it's those relationships that make a business work. And we're going to have to be more purposeful to get to a new place on that challenge. If not, business will become transactional and it will not be relationship based. Because, face it, we all have an innate desire and we're social animals and we want to make moments and small minutes matter to one another. So we have to be purposeful in helping our leaders be planful about creating those moments that matter for the organization, and because they're not just naturally going to come to us. I think Brady will hit on it too. The war for talent is going to get tougher. People are going to have choices. And unless we can accommodate their asks, we won't get them because we've created a whole new world for them. And they're going to expect that, no, I probably don't have to move anywhere and I can work. And if that doesn't work for you, there's plenty of other opportunities. And the best people, we all know, always have lots of choices. The other thing that we're finding out and we're going to have to tackle is it's a bit of a generational issue as well. So surprisingly, I would have thought out of the gate that, folks right out of college would say, great, I have all the tools, I can work remotely and I can be wherever I want, whether that's the beach or somewhere else. But surprisingly, we're finding out those are the folks that went through college and aspired to be in the office and build those relationships. So they're the ones from our surveys that are saying, I'm eager to get back. I want to be in the office. I want to make a difference. The other challenge we're facing into is diversity goals. So it's going to be even more challenging as women in the marketplace, particularly, are really rethinking the balance between workplace and home lives after their family lives have shifted over the last year. And they're going to be making some decisions once they see how their kids have transpired with home education over the last year. Are they behind? Did it work? Did it not work? Do they need to make different family choices? Because naturally, women have this innate guilt about we have to go fix that. And so I think we're going to have to really think about that in the marketplace for talent. So, how we're thinking about it too is if there has ever been a time to survey your employees, it's now, right before they come back, and understand what they tell you. First of all, don't survey them if you're not going to do anything about it, because there's nothing worse than doing that. But understanding what they want. And this is a huge opportunity for us as a business, because when we go back to the office, we have the opportunity to reset everything. And as others have said, at least 20% of your employee population don't even know what your culture is, because they haven't been in your office and they haven't experienced it ever. And they've never had the water cooler talk at your company. So if you don't take advantage of this opportunity to understand what you want the culture to be, you could potentially lose that 20%, because the old employees are going to come back pre-COVID and they're going to bounce right back into the old culture. So it's a tremendous opportunity to really get rid of what you don't like about your culture based on what you hear from your employees from a survey perspective. Mm-hmm. The real challenging one, a couple other points I'll make here, is the real challenging population is going to be the middle managers. They're going to have the toughest time with this, because they're going to come back and they're going to need to be really equipped with the things that really matter the most. And we as leaders are going to have to help them prioritize that. And I suspect that likely one of the biggest needs will be, how do you focus on building the team and the culture first? And how do we give them the tools to do that? And if you reset your culture right, then the productivity will come. They will be confused about where to spend their time, and we can't afford to lose a day once we get back into the office. So empathy will be more important than ever. And we'll be encouraging our leaders just to ask 3 questions of their people to really listen for empathy, which is, how are things going? How can I help you? And is there anything or anyone blocking your success to get your job done? And that will give us a huge opportunity to really make a difference going forward. We're going to have to be clear about the roles that are remote, because not everybody's going to be able to be remote at all times. And they're going to see their leaders being remote and wonder why they can't flex to it all the time too. So I have to really set standards around what that can be. We have to be clear with people the days that they should be in offices. In some cases, we may rotate it by functions. We may set, everybody has to be in the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, or, certain weeks we may do things, but it's going to be a bit of a puzzle and we're going to have to figure it out. But I think the biggest thing we can do is face into it with the employees that it's going to be weird when we come back. And it was a weird year last year and this year, and they should expect that it's going to be weird, and it's okay. But tell people that this is a time for us to reinvent the culture, and also a time for them to reinvent themselves as they come back into that culture.
Belinda, just to add, we use Lattice, and I don't know if you are using a tool for that, but we do pulse surveys a couple times a week, and basically the same 3 questions, and we're feeding back to our colleagues, and it's been incredibly helpful. We're watching the trends and changing the way we're doing things. And on the culture piece, I think the 20% of people don't know the culture. I got that, but the 80% of the people also need the culture reinforced regularly. And so it's a 100% model, not a 20% model, because I think, the diffusion of that culture over time, if you're remote and not having those comfortable and warm coffee chats, we lose that opportunity as well. And so I think it's reinforcement plus the environment.
Yeah, and I think it's the opportunity to say, what are the things that, to your point, the 80% didn't like when we left? And you have a huge opportunity to reset that as well, too, for your 100%.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think, Linda, just to sort of underline your point, it's so important to over communicate, and you know how to communicate through these types of surveys, and we've seen them be incredibly effective as well. And it's been fascinating to watch the employee engagement scores across our portfolio companies this year vis-a-vis 2019. And I think these surveys just give you a really good way to communicate with your employees, and it's just so clear that they're looking for that communication, and they want to know as far in advance as possible around how things are going to change and what they can expect very specifically in terms of coming back into the office. So I couldn't agree more. I think there's on the positive side, I think there is a chance also, to your point, to retain some of the flexibility, the time cut down on commute, the time with people's families that they're getting to spend that they wouldn't otherwise get to spend. And look, I agree. I think people, especially our more junior employees, I think have probably never been more productive. I think they're executing at a really high level, but it's almost at the detriment of losing that 10 minutes on the way back from the meeting, or reading the body language of a CEO and understanding how to really work with someone in that EQ element. And it's been interesting because we've had some junior folks say, I can't, I'd say the majority, to your point, can't wait to get back in the office. But a percentage is concerned that they're not going to execute at as high of a level because they will have to commute, or they will have to be in meetings in person, and they won't be able to be on Zoom and also doing other work while they're pretending to listen. And so I think sometimes they don't even know what they're missing is part of the issue. And so getting them back in a way that it's trying to strike, I think, at that balance of what did we like about what is so important that we need to retain in order to develop the next generation of our leaders, but what can we change to adapt to this new world where technology, people probably don't need to hop on a plane for a 2-hour meeting. And that's a beautiful thing that this has taught us. but it's how do you strike that balance? And it's so individual for each company, for each division, for each, which is why I think I couldn't agree more just on giving our middle managers and managers the tools that they need to be able to communicate with their employees and communicate to be able to advance this. The last piece I'll say that I think has been really interesting to watch is, like everyone, we're trying to move to a culture where feedback is given in the moment, and it's not, we're not waiting for the mid-year and the year-end review to deliver that feedback. But a lot of managers have said to me, well, I want to give someone this small piece of constructive feedback, but I don't want to set up a Zoom to give them that feedback. So therefore, I just don't give it. And then, of course, what happens is the problem becomes bigger and bigger. And then it feels like more of a surprise when we're delivering that message at some point. And so that feedback has been the other piece that I've seen not necessarily hold up sometimes. I think some people are better about it than others, but just the idea of setting up a Zoom just to deliver a quick sentence seems daunting, I think.
Yeah, from my perspective alone, I mean, initially there was so much anxiety around COVID. The commitment by our companies to allow employee to work with the employee in the best way they can, to put them in a position to be effective from home, was a very positive thing. Now, there's a kind of a healthy tension between, understanding and now learning what flexibility can do, but also having a desire to be out of your, quarantine home and somewhere else to get some things done. There's great advantages if you have small kids or pets or, elderly parents that you're having to deal with for all this flexibility, but every now and then you just want to be, out of it. And I think that's the shift that we're seeing now, that people are, for a lack of a better term, spring fever or stir crazy. They want to be, if they were always on the road, they have a desire to get back on the roads. Like Don, I mean, he's never, he's always been carrying a bag by his introduction. So he hadn't spent a lot of time in the office anyway. If he did, his boss was probably telling him, get out there. But so we're looking forward to how we're going to move back in. My offices in California have been the ones under the most restrictions, as mandated by their county or their state or the state itself. And I can tell you those people are just chomping at the bit to get back into an office. Of course, our offices aren't in an area where they have to commute. They're in communities like Thousand Oaks or, down in Orange County, so they can get to their offices pretty easily. But, I think the really positive thing that's come of it has been the realization by the employees that we would commit to enable them in their, particular situation to be effective, and it wouldn't cause them to have stress about whether they're going to retain their job, which was a big, issue in the very beginning, aside from just the anxiety over COVID itself.
Yeah, I think it's been really positive for us from a productivity perspective. All of our companies and with Pacific Lake, that our team has just excelled, right? The amount of work that's coming through is ridiculous. And so I think the challenge, I think we've talked about it, is I think about a sales process is you want the appropriate amount of science and the appropriate amount of art. And I think we're really good in the science side right now, that we're getting a lot of productivity. Zoom has worked. People are working hard. They have more time to put to the nice nose of the grindstone. But the art piece really matters about the cultures we've talked about. And so working diligently about that. And I think the empathy part that we've talked about is key. And I think we've done a really good job giving people money to set their work from home office the right way, to get a good office chair, things like that. We give everybody $1,000 or $1,500 to go do that. And so that was a compassionate piece. We're talking about the 10 minutes before and after. I think, Linda, you talked about that. I work really hard for the first 10 minutes of our meeting is to make it personal. So we get to the business of the day. If it starts at 10, at 10:10, we start the meeting and we talk about kids and family and what's going on and weather and golf games, just so we can create some of that modeling. And we're trying to also compress the Zoom calls. So that's antithetical to that, because I think, I want the Zoom meeting to be an hour, but I want 10 minutes of it to be social, right? Let's just talk about human beings and human reactions, et cetera, et cetera. So we're working through that process, but I think the productivity gains have been ridiculous. We know what we can do, but the culture piece is going to be something we have to work very carefully as we come back.
Makes sense. Well, let's talk more about the transaction. How things are working in larger companies, collaborating and getting, moving the ball down the field. You think about, an enterprise sale. You think about an M&A transaction. I mean, how is all of that being impacted through all this as well?
Well, there are no closing dinners anymore, Craig. So when you get a deal done, you don't have that to look forward to. And you get your. I will say the bankers are still, pushing these guys out, which is just funny to me. But having said that, I found that the sale process we went through in October was. Having bought and sold a bunch of companies, it wasn't really all that different. The one thing that you didn't have was in the diligence meetings where you've got the acquirer coming in and sitting down with the management team, and then you have the afterwards you have the dinner, and you get to know each other socially. That was very different. From an investor, not having that skin in the game, it was kind of the same. It was long calls and lots of lawyers and that sort of stuff. The one area that I think we will see, so I would say a negative or a slowing of growth impact, is that the number of, I would say, meaningful interactions that we've had on effectively selling has declined some. I don't know what the impact of that's going to be. Our companies have continued to grow, but the personal interaction, I'm curious to see how it affects growth, not in 2021, but in 2022. Yeah. Once we start, back, what's going to happen. And so, jury's still out on that from my perspective. I've been encouraged that we can still get meetings and have Zoom calls, and we're still getting business done. But I just have, and maybe it's me just not wanting to let go of how I learned to do things. But I'm concerned that it will see a little bit of slowdown in some of our companies.
Oh, that makes sense. Linda, how is it working with, globally 25,000 people and the collaboration and all of that needs to happen?
Yeah, we've been quite surprised on the sales front because, we halted those folks from flying around, just like others have not flown around. But we have exceeded our sales goals. So I think everybody's kind of in this together and learning how to navigate the storm a little bit differently. I think the real question will be, to George's point, is once we all get back, does everybody shift back to the old way and have an expectation of that? Mm-hmm. Or do people reset the bar and say it's okay if we do this, transaction through Zoom or something? I mean, clearly the deal front's working because we, as a company, have announced that we are being purchased. So, and that all happened during COVID. So, the transaction won't close until later this year. But it has been very different than other transactions that we have done because, to George's point as well, we're not sitting across the table from folks and talking about, how do we make this work, which in some cases is probably even better because you have so many restrictions around the Department of Justice and things you can and can't do when you're in a transaction anyway. So it kind of forces you to say, okay, well, I can't really talk to you. But so it's been challenging, and we're going to have to continue to watch the productivity and make sure that we get the metrics right relative to the productivity for the organization. We've got a lot of metrics, but we're going to have to continue to test those and make sure that they are continuing to work for us, and that it strikes a balance between the world of giving people the autonomy that they need every day versus, you know, Big Brother looking over their shoulder and feel like they can do their jobs the way they want to. We've also had to reinvent all of our go-to-market materials, you know, because you're not going to a sales meeting and handing a brochure out. And so all of that has really been a completely different philosophy as well.
I think, I don't know if you've read the Bank of America healthcare M&A report that came out about a month or so ago. It was the most interesting report because unlike page 12, it talks about the sales strategy, that because they were doing Zoom, they were way more effective in communicating with people. And they said, even in the Midwest, which I thought was very funny, the flyover states actually got people to visit in St. Louis and Chicago, et cetera, and that they were much more effective in fundraising and doing deals by the communication of Zoom. That was, and they called it out in the report, which I thought was shocking, right? From a sales guy's perspective, this was really interesting. So we can be more effective, right? And I think about complicated sales where you have SMEs you need to bring in. At Healthways, we would fly those people to meetings, right? We'd have a jet, we'd have 8 people in a meeting and da, da, da. Now you can connect those people over Zoom to have these very specific technical conversations. Everybody's used to that and much more effective in the way we can do it. And you can tie those together without, you know, you can do it in an hour rather than scheduling a flight and doing it next week. So I think this is going to unlock a lot of communication capabilities that you're still going to have to travel to a certain degree, but I think it's going to reduce by 60%.
Yeah. We've also created customer advisory councils to help advise us on really how they want to do the new norm going forward and how it will work best. So that should be insightful for us to learn from too.
Yeah, we have, I think we've yet to have but 2 clients allow them to come see it, for us to come see them in a year. And, you know, Brady, one of the clients we're working with is literally across the street and we still haven't here in Nashville. But any thoughts for you, Brady? And just
yeah, I think I agree. I think it's going to be sort of back to that hybrid approach. We used to travel for every board meeting that we would conduct. We used to meet every candidate, especially at the C-suite level, that we would hire in person at least once. And all of that has changed. I think we're, you know, when we're evaluating businesses from a diligence perspective, we're meeting the management team sometimes over Zoom, but it's often now actually been a pre-recording. So talk about difficult to assess from my perspective, because it's all pre-recorded. So we're having to get creative in terms of ways to be able to get at some of those issues that were much easier to pick up at a closing dinner or board dinner or something like that. So I think we will probably move back. My prediction is that we'll move back to sort of a hybrid model where, you know, maybe 2 of them are live, two board meetings are live per year. And I think we're getting pretty good at assessing candidates over Zoom. Still work to be done, but I think we'll likely see some sort of hybrid, given that it's, you know, it is a big time suck to get on a plane and travel and you know, spend 2 days for a very short meeting. But I think some sort of combination is probably the right answer.
No, that makes sense. Any final thoughts or comments? We're getting close to running out of time here, but just as we kind of wrap up.
Well, I mean, I would just say that I think I'm looking forward for this experiment to be over.
Yeah.
But that's just a personal thing. You know, I did hear a story of a good friend of mine has a daughter that's in the healthcare arena, but her role is really counseling children, and while I really haven't seen a dramatic effect, you know, in my day-to-day from the ability to impact and hit my goals, you know, this young lady has decided to rethink her entire career because the interaction that you have over these devices is not meaningful enough for her to have the impact that she wants to have on these children's lives. And so I think it's easy to kind of talk through all the success of what we've had, what we've done, and we've done some brilliant things, all of us. But the human interaction is going to be critical, and easing people, the new people, back into to that environment where they can't just close their laptop at the end of a meeting and roll their eyes and say whatever they want to say. They're forced to, continually deal with the situation. I think is going to be something that'll be fun to watch. We'll do what we got to do, but that's going to be fun to watch. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys today. It's been fascinating to hear how each of you guys have handled this and the successes that you've had. So it's encouraging.
Without a doubt. Linda, you're going to say something?
No, go right ahead.
Just to wrap this up, fascinating to me that with all the different sizes of companies, really at the core, we're really still all dealing with the same issues, just at different scales, right? And so, a little bit of takeaway, just the EQ development, as we watch, you watch highly skilled people with low EQ not, hit ceilings easily, right? And so, and you look at these high potentials that have such good skill sets that, as they develop their EQ, they just blossom and their trajectory. And so, I think the challenge for all of us is to figure out how do we continue to mentor and mold and help the next two generations continue to really blossom so that they impact the next level, right? And so it'll be interesting. But I tell you, this has been fascinating just to hear just how effective, frankly, people have figured out how to be. And I think I was on a call real early in the pandemic with a group from Australia who wanted to hear how they all kind of look at the us in America as just entrepreneurial, we figure it out. And, I was, you didn't know what was going to happen, but yes, we've all figured out how to succeed and make it happen. And I think the hybrid model will get figured out as well. So I think somebody said I'm encouraged. I kind of walk away from this highly encouraged, frankly, that we're gonna do just fine. So, well, thank you all for taking the time today, and everybody's busy, so really appreciate it. And the comments, I'll share some comments. They've all been pretty phenomenal. Just the takeaways from today. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you guys.
Happy birthday.
You too.
Bye-bye.